Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, anything at all, please go to the bell and look at all the links. That's if you get a connect is at an epiphany, a mind-blown moment, a new book to read, a new author to explore. Please consider supporting my work. All the links are in the description box. Before I start, why are we here? Because it's new dimensions and I can't wait to start it. I got new plugs. Yes, my ear holes are big. I used to be in the tattooing industry. Fun times. I had a job fair today. No, I didn't wear these. I was thinking about it. I had to dress professional. I had to look normal. I had to seep back into the matrix and I didn't like it one bit, but unfortunately, what do you do when you need to support yourself? And it's just you with no help. You do what you have to do. So yes, I filled out 3 applications today for the school system. I know a lot of people are against schools because of indoctrinating things. But I am here to tell you that I think kids, and I don't poo-poo homeschooling at all. I think that's fantastic. And I would recommend that. But kids do need to learn social emotional learning. They do need to learn their numbers and letters, and they do need to learn how to be amongst the matrix society, because I'm just going to be square for those people who are having this crazy notion that things are going to change anytime soon. It's going to be a very slow, arduous process of change. Things just don't happen overnight. As much as we want to manifest things, some things just don't happen like that. So I'm trying to manifest a job. I put action into motion and I walked my happy ass around the corner. Well, no, I drove because it's way too hot. And I was wearing heels. Yes. Business attire. So I walked around the building that's really literally around the corner. And I had no idea that it was around the corner. I thought it was way further up the block than it would be. Really nice place. An amazing amount of people showed up. Really funny story, really quick. So I'm just thanking the soldiers and the state troopers and the police were there, hiring, people that were interested. They gave me an odd look. So I'm open to whatever kind of work I can get. I don't have much experience with much because most places don't take chances on somebody that would like to get trained. So I just walked around and I stopped at some tables out of interest of what their corporation jobs were. And I see 2 lovely ladies sitting at a table. I stop and it's the Gary, Indiana table for their school system. And they look at me and they shot me like, what are you doing over here at this table? And I'm reading their intentions. I'm feeling it out. I hand them my resume and they're like, you are from New York. Uh-huh. And what's your experience? So I rattled off some things. that I used to do. And I'm like, before I got the job that's listed on the paper, I had a sub in order to get my full-time position at the school. And they said I worked in the South Bronx. Their attitude with me changed in 2 seconds. Because they're looking at me like this little white girl. Like, and I'm just like, what do you get this all the time? Like, all these white people go to Gary, and it's, yeah, it like the white person is the minority in Gary, Indiana, but it's just like any other county, town, and city. It has people who has needs, and there's nothing to be afraid of unless you make that fear and create it for yourself. Yeah, is there crime? There's crime everywhere. It's, I would say I'd be less hesitant. Everybody was telling me to go to Chicago to look for a job. I'm like, no. Here's my problem. I'm at the midway point in my life. I'm still young, but I'm 40. I already did the freaking 4-hour back and forth, 2 hours one way, depending on the time in the day. Sometimes I get caught up in traffic. I'd be on the bus for hours. And yeah, now I would have to be driving my own car. I don't want to do commutes like that anymore. I'm tired. I was coming home. I didn't have a life. I was up at 4 a.m. and didn't get home until 5, 6 o'clock at night. And by the time I got home, my body was completely shot, and I left everything for the weekend, and I didn't have a weekend because I had to do everything. Although I like the school hours, I like school's times off, and that stuff works for me. And I'm trying to get into elementary school, not where they get the basics. That's where I want to be, and that's where I feel I should be. And then eventually I'll, once I get used to being in Indiana and being here, I'll move forward. But I actually want to continue doing this channel. I don't want to neglect it, and I need time for that. I'm working on the hermit's journey that is taking me forever to transcribe in my own words, for most part. This last story on Manly P. Hall, it's crazy. It's awesome. I want to make it amazing for you guys. Anywho, sorry, off on tangents. Why are we here? I started this book, and like the title, it grabbed me. The first 2 chapters were mind-blowing. If you haven't, please go watch that video or buy the book, because it's great. And you don't need to buy it. Actually, they have a website and you can get it a free download. Their work is incredible. We're going to start on chapter 3, New Dimensions. The crushing events of the Second World War have cracked through the crust of our former complacent acceptance of life and have made mankind aware of a wider field of understanding, a new dimension in life and consciousness. Materialism limits. The truths taught and accepted by religion were held by science to be unproved because not physically demonstrable in scientific laboratories, but the crisis and cries of the present war have now demonstrated in the laboratory of human experience the reality of the principles taught by religion. For we now see the truth, honesty, ideals, love, compassion, brotherhood, and cooperation are just as real as bombs, submarines, and airplanes. And they have far greater power than the mightiest of war machines, for they govern the use of all the materials of the world. Science has assumed that the physical world has only 3 dimensions, which can be known and measured, length, breadth, and thickness until recently, when a fourth dimension, time, space, has been added. I'm going to put a pause 2 seconds right there. If we go back to, I want to say it's the spiritual soul advice I did, talking about time crystals. That physics girl talks about how fourth dimension is time space. So from when this book was written to now, because this was recently that she talked about it, that I saw at least, that is a true fact. Especially in a physicist explaining time space and fourth dimension. For it is now admitted that time space is not separate from other aspects of manifestation, but is the matrix in which all expression takes place. I'm going to read that again. For it is now admitted that time space is not separate from other aspects of manifestation, but is the matrix in which in which all expression takes place. Though there is something I was listening to earlier, and I've heard it before, but I haven't really studied it enough to, but it goes on to the black holes that I've been reading all those articles. Quick little fun fact here. As I'm listening to it, it's kind of resonating more with me. But a black hole theorized by, I forgot the physicist's names, forgive me, but he was actually challenging Hawking that the black hole that gathers all the qubits and information in black dark matter is projecting our hologram because it's in the center of our universe. Quite a concept. But that just brought it up because black hole matrix. Anywho, science has taught that there were only 3 dimensions to life, as expressed in the 3 primary biological urges or hungers for food, comfort, and sex satisfaction. But there is a 4th. Science has also taught that there were but 3 dimensions to mind, thought, feeling, and will. But there is a 4th. The intellect. These conclusions have been reached by one faculty of consciousness alone, the masculine polarity of intellect. Now the intellect is the instrument of thought expression, which formulates and translates ideation into concrete ideas. It is the sharp scalpel of the mind, which dissects whatever it contacts. Of itself, it is cold, analytical, separative, and diversive. Its analysis of humanity has separated the oneness of mankind into races, nations, communities, and individuals, each with majorities and minorities, which establish pressure groups for the attainment of their own selfish ends. This intellectual analysis has been so material and separative that we have been taught that races, nations were almost separate species, which could very well get along without one another. Yet it was found that the intercourse was necessary and mutually advantageous. And as evolution advanced through savagery, barbarism, and feudalism into modern civilization, certain agreements had to be entered into regulate and stabilize such intercourse. And from these gentlemen's agreements, a code of international conduct known as international law was evolved. But with the recent resurgence of brutal barbarism, all this has been ruthlessly trampled under the tread of mechanized brutal force. Through this wanton aggression, in which all the rules of international conduct, which centuries of respect for law had built up, and the freedom of many non-belligerent peoples were swept away, a new consciousness has been born. And I want to note that we are consciously making a new consciousness again. Many consciousnesses are evolving as a social memory complex, but it's in the baby stages. One of those being the middle way path. It's the middle way because God's neutral. So if you find the path of God, the source of all, the intelligent infinity, whatever you would like to call the pleroma and the monad, neutrality, because both good and evil encompass us, and both good and evil encompass this density of experience. Though, again, we have to remember that a lot of civilizations had called this an illusion, a holographic simulation. So how real is it? And how real is that consciousness? We're forming new forms of will and consciousness. Try to find the middle way. A new consciousness. The tragic mingling of many nations and common misery and suffering has broken down the artificial, intellectually made barriers of race, language, and boundary lines, and has awakened a new fourth dimension in the consciousness of nations, namely the essential unity of mankind. It has brought the realization that mankind is not made up of separate species, but is one. One community of human beings, all fashioned and projected into physical life by the same creator. Bingo. Hence, they are all the children of the one God, no matter how diverse of the names by which he is called. I would have quoted this section in my applications today. I didn't think Indiana had it in them to play the separative card. Asking about ethnic and racial issues that you might have possibly had while working. I did mention we're human. And we're one species. Hopefully that gets me somewhere. But I didn't think they're going to go with the CRT bullshit. Sorry for anybody who is offended by that, but it really is, because we are all one. It is true that philosophers and religious teachers throughout the ages have taught the essential oneness of mankind, but this was actually realized only by the advanced few. And it took the brutality of this war to break down the old intellectual concept of diversity into rationalization, that beneath the seeming superficial diversity, there was an essential oneness of humanity. But this is another evidence of our entry into influence of new Aquarian or woman's age, for it is only the cohesive feminine force of love and compassion that can recognize the world. For love, not intellect, is cohesive, synthesizing, constructive, and unutive. The intellect vicariously seizes everything it envisions and dissects it. On the other hand, love flows out to unfold, integrate, develop, expand, and perfect all its contacts. Several fourth dimensions. See, this book is talking Allison language, and I freaking love it. It's not really my language. It's just Goodness sakes. Just as a new fourth dimension has been found for matter, so has there recently been recognized a fourth biological urge or hunger. This is the hunger for oneness through companionship. The craving for oneness through harmonious and happy relations with our fellow man. It is the fourth dimension of hunger for unity that makes man a gracious and gregarious instead of a solitary animal. And just as the satisfaction of the fourth dimension of biological hunger for companionship is recognized as necessity for the well-rounded life of an individual unit of humanity, so it is being recognized as an essential need among the larger units of humanity, the nations and races. Thus, it is futile and frustrative for any nation or race to strive to be sufficient unto itself. For as the civilization advances and its interests broaden, it realizes that it is but one unit in a community of nations and races, and it takes all these workings together to form our common humanity. Another fourth dimension is one in the realm of mind. To the three dimensions of thought, feeling, and will, there must now be recognized a fourth dimension, the selfless emotion of compassion. For the mind cannot be at peace with itself and able thus to express true happiness while it contemplates the misery and suffering of the other individuals, nations, and races which it contacts daily through travel and worldwide broadcasts. To satisfy this compelling force of compassion in our communities, we organize hospitals, sanatoria, homes for the deaf and dumb. Oh, I don't like that word. For the blind, the crippled, and the aged. And to satisfy our compassion for other communities and nations, we organize the Red Cross. Bundles for Britain, aid to China, and the means of feeding the children of war-devastated countries. Pause. Why I made those faces is because us unknowing, beautiful souls that most of us are always wanting to help in some way, but we can't physically get on a plane and go to some of these places that need some absolute help. Or when a disaster strikes, you just don't have the means to get to these, like a tornado or a hurricane. You have work, you have your kids, you have your family, you have your life, but you want to be helpful. So you donate some of your funds to these organizations who absolutely don't use it for its means. And people that, they said end world hunger. And yet, how many more years later do we see the same situation and the same people siphoning off that money, and those people are not getting what you intended to send? They're not seeing it. So go ask yourselves, is it even worth it? I say it's worth finding organizations that actually do what they say they're going to do. Not be tied to grants and organizations that claim they're going to do something and they don't. And you could tell by how long they've been in the business and where the help is actually going, because you don't see it. Our interdependence. This new dimension of compassion makes us realize as never before that since humanity is one, that injures one community, nation, or branch of the human family repercusses, either directly or indirectly, to the injury of all. Likewise, what benefits one rebounds to benefit and the happiness of all. Until this oneness and interdependence is universally recognized and properly coordinated, we must expect social, economic, and other disasters to continue to overwhelm all of us. The individual who is so occupied with the details of his personal affairs that he gives no thought and attention to the welfare of his community will be helpless, engulfed by the conditions of his environment in waves of graft, crime, bankruptcy, and epidemics of disease, all due to some form of community pollution. The man who will not cooperate with his neighbors in the role of his community must accept the conditions provided by those whose self-interests dominate. Just so those nations which are so intended on their own affairs and on maintaining their own peace and neutrality, that they do not accept their responsibility for the world conditions and so work for world peace and cooperation, will be engulfed in the conditions of world inharmonies, which their isolation has permitted to develop, such as the onrushing tide of ruthless dictatorships. The nation which will not cooperate with other nations for harmonious world conditions will be dominated by world tyrants. To stop this useless self-destruction due to failure to recognize the new dimensions of compassion and unity, and to prevent its subsequent resurgence after world peace has been restored, all humanity, or at least the leaders of nations, must grasp and act upon this fourth dimensional cosmic concept of humanity's oneness, and therefore the intrinsic brotherhood of man. As one note sage has said, quote, "It is only by close brotherly union of man's inner selves, or soul solidarity, or the growth and development of that feeling which makes one suffer when one thinks of the suffering of others, that the reign of justice and equality for all can even be inaugurated." End quote. Demonstration needed. This realization must not remain a mere academic theory or metaphysical concept, but must be made a working reality. It must become a law of life, which shall underlie not only political, but social, economic, and all other relations between nations. For until the leaders and men have entered into this new dimension of world consciousness, the actual spiritual realization of the oneness of mankind, they will go on planning life on the same old narrow, selfish, nationalistic, and self-frustrating lines, and thus they are bound to reap the same old tragic results. As we keep saying after World War II, sacrifice needed. Psychology tells us that we must all make some sacrifices of our personal desires in order to live harmoniously and happily within our own consciousness for our own psychological salvation. That is to avoid frustration and unhappiness. We must also make sacrifices to live harmoniously and happily with our neighbors for our social and economic salvation and happiness. The athlete denies himself many indulgences because his main purpose is to help his team to win the contest. Sorry, guys, my allergies. Just so much nations sacrifice many national ambitions because their main desire is to live harmoniously and happily with other nations for their own national and international salvation and for the welfare and happiness of humanity as a whole. Personal application. To apply this new dimensional realization to our personal lives, we must realize that the cosmic conception, which enables us to enter the newly realized dimensions of consciousness, is the realization that our belief life and brief life here on earth is but one day's experience in the life of our souls, our real spiritual selves. For our consciousness is like a mighty hourglass. Pause, because the other day, I didn't read this. I'm reading it with you guys. I made an analogy of the hourglass. Okay, my mind just went, no effing way. Oh, here's my bigger Post-it. Sorry, guys. Finding post-it. I'm drawing, guys. You'll see what I'm doing in a second. Okay, so you are a grain of sand in this hourglass, and on the top is your oversoul, which you can equate to source. And then source starts to individuate, and you start descending down the hourglass in your little grain of sand, but you are amongst it all. You're amongst all the other grains of sand as you are one sand timer. But your little individuated sand falls. So then you individualize yourself into aspects of source. So we all started off as an oversoul. Then we have our higher selves, but that is an embodiment of what? An angel, an archangel, a guardian angel, maybe an ascended master. And then you keep individuating until you get to your little piece of the grain here, which is totally on its own because you're the one left grain of sand that's going to fall back into it. And then the cycle is repeated in the opposite, as above, so below. Your avatar, bye-bye, dissolves back into the sand of the all oneness. And then you get to your higher self level, and then you get to your other individuated levels, and then you be coming back to source. You start with source, you end with source. Hourglass, holy crap. I was just making that analogy yesterday. Okay, so spirit's messing with me. For our consciousness is like a mighty hourglass whose narrow waist alone touches the physical plane at one tiny point only. Just explained it. I didn't even read that. The lower cone of the hourglass spreads out into the unfathomable depths of the unconscious realms, while the upper cone expands upward indefinitely into the sublime regions of the superconsciousness or spiritual realms. The sand in an hourglass can drop through its narrow waist only a few grains at a time, as long as the outlet is unblocked. Just so can the grains of our superconscious or spiritual mind, our personalized ray of the infinite consciousness, filter through into our finite minds only a little at a time, even when its outlet remains unblocked. For naturally, the infinite consciousness can exhibit only tiny aspects of itself to the perception of our little finite minds. Holy crap. This is nuts because I'm picking up on a collective consciousness, because I seriously didn't read this. And I came up with this the last couple of days. And now I'm reading it, but also today I was watching Honey C. Golden, and she gave the same similar analogy, and I'm like, okay, we're pulling it. So telepathy, channeling telepathy, I don't know. Another validation. Anywho, sorry. But if the outlet into our human consciousness is blocked because it is continually filled with personal, selfish, and material thoughts and desires, the cosmic concepts from our fourth dimensional consciousness cannot get through to expand our minds and hearts. And only by such expansion can we receive a flash of cosmic consciousness to guide us into harmonious cooperation with cosmic law and express it in acts of brotherhood and oneness. I think this is what we are collectively working on right now. The cause of suffering. It is only by our failure to live in harmony with cosmic law that we bring up upon ourselves the sorrow and suffering which inevitably results from our opposition to the law. For the law is like a mighty grindstone, which should polish and perfect us and sharpen our wits to understand it. But if we resist its onward sweep, it grinds us to dust. Our suffering is not the punishment of a hard-hearted God. It is simply the nature and natural result of our failure to cooperate with the cosmic grindstone. But if we recognize and become one with it, we ride upon it and are carried onward into unknown regions and upward into measureless heights in the cosmic manifestation of its mighty ongoing. So it is not God who makes either wars or suffering, only our failure to respond to cosmic law of harmony, brotherhood, and cooperation. And we will continue to suffer from such conditions until we enter into and live out the new dimension of spiritual realization of the oneness of humanity. Our prayers go unanswered unless we really correlate with cosmic law and allow it to flow through us in an expression for the best good of all. Unless to pious words we add potent acts which will materialize our inner realization. And the cosmic law includes the feminine pole of love and compassion, as well as the masculine pole of life and intellect and will. Leadership. Under the law of love and brotherhood, it is the duty of the more advanced, those whose consciousness has expanded to grasp something of the cosmic concept of the new dimensions of matter, life, and consciousness, to lead, guide, and inspire the masses who are unable to realize the new dimensions into which the world consciousness has entered. It therefore becomes the duty of you who can grasp this ideal to spread it abroad so dynamically that it will crystallize into action in your own life, in your family and community, and ultimately into the life of your own and other nations. For only as the qualities of these new dimensions begin their concrete manifestation in your personal life today through action, can they perfect your personal unfoldment and allow you to manifest more fully the ray of God, which you are within. Pause. We are at this cliff, this theoretical, imaginative cliff that a lot of people talk about, the cliff, right? You can either be pulled back, you could take the leap forward. If you look at the full card in the tarot, it's a guy, a person, a caricature of something going over the cliff and taking the big leap of faith. And in the movements that I belong to and other people belong to, and also the spiritual movement, you're seeing a bridge. You're seeing the cliff where there's a lot of people willing to take that leap of faith into the abyss, into the unknown, to actually enact what I just read. And then you have other people who are at the tip of the cliff, but they're they're hesitant. And then you have everybody else in society blinded. We're here, and this book is clearly outlining that, and that's insane. Feminine forces. Remember that it was feminine forces of cohesion, synthesis, integration, and growth that brought the whole universe into birth and manifestation. And through the gradual unfolding of its predetermined pattern evolution, it is those same feminine forces which are gradually being the grand plan to perfection. Just so, sorry guys. Just so much the corresponding forces of understanding, tolerance, compassion, brotherhood, and cooperation manifested by both men and women wield all nations into one harmonious humanity. Only thus can the new age of love, brotherhood, and cooperation be born, and a perfected humanity be evolved, which shall know not war. Woman's duty. Hence, it is love and compassion, not intellect alone, which must be recognized as an essential in the reconstruction of the new world order. I don't like that. Cancel clear. Instead of new world order, because that's what we're trying to actually not be a part of. The fascists, the communists that are trying, almost succeeded, trying to take over humanity. No. So instead of new world order, we're going to call it the new earth. How's that? As women are the focal points of the forces of the feminine polarity of the cosmos, it must be chiefly the enlightened women of the world, through their countless clubs, peace societies, and other organizations, who must follow and focus the manifestating the cosmic law, the cosmic love force in the world today, just as it was the women of France who carried the burdens and influenced the readjustment after the last World War. So must it be the women of the world today who must organize and determine to have the decisive say as to the conditions under which they and their families shall live in future generations under the World Federation of Humanity, in which all nations participate. Since it is easier for women to respond to the new dimensions of compassion and unity, it must be the women who, after the war is over, must mother the world, bind up its wounds, and nurse it back to health, sanity, freedom, and happiness. What will you do toward this end now? What was in that section? And that was a lengthy one, but holy crap. Sorry, I keep pausing. It's just, why? Because we're here at this juncture. We're in it to win it right now. And again, like I was talking about the job fair and everything, my frequency needs to be with the children because they're the next generation. I don't have kids of my own. I'm a hermit for the most part. We got to prepare. How can we snuggle up at home and do everything online when the real action needs to be put into motion in the physical world? And, you know, I'm not criticizing anybody who does work from home or teaches their kids from home. You know, you do you, boo. But enough of us who have the frequency, the vibratory state of this fourth consciousness, this neutrality, this God middle way consciousness of oneness, unity, and harmonizing needs to spread more throughout the world. I feel that I was taken from New York and brought to where I am because my light needs to spread here and I need to teach a lot of lessons to people. Because again, I'm a test straight from source. I test people. Passing the judgment off. It's insane. Chapter 4, with courage and faith. The nightmare of the ages is upon us. The day of the karmic cleansing of the nations has begun. The changes necessary for the close of the old dispensation of separateness and individualism of nations and peoples, and the opening of new dispensation of brotherhood and cooperation are at hand. The cosmic plan. It is the cosmic plan for the Aquarian age that the barriers of boundaries, politics, language, and trade, which have kept peoples from harmonizing and fraternizing with one another, as they did even across the trenches during the holidays, shall be broken down and removed. But this adjustment should have come constructively through enlightenment and cooperation instead of destructively through war. But since the natural forces of renovation and regeneration have been dominated by the forces of evil disguised as nationalism and race superiority, you must understand the process, or your hearts may be filled with dark and foreboding and even fears. Since the last World War, you've seen the fall of kingdoms, thrones, and dynasties, and the rise of many independent, self-governing nations. Now you are again witnessing the rise of the lust for power and world dominion. But this time, the most ignoble means are being used. To the natural unrest and turmoil incident, to changing conditions, there have been added a boring form within, penetrated by alien plotters, treason by members of the fifth column, and the Blitzberg of sudden aggression against peaceful peoples. You have seen the pillaging and ravishing of democratic countries who ask only to be left alone to live their lives in peace, and now comes the new world war. The prophecies, both biblical and pyramid prophecies, have warned that at the end of this dispensation, when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, see that ye be not troubled, for all things must come to pass, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, men's hearts falling for fear. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. All sources of prophecy, biblical, pyramid, inspired point out that this conflict was due to clean up the debris of the old cycle of materialism and selfish commercialism, to make way for the new age of brotherhood and service. As we have already pointed out, the time has now come when the accumulated mass of old race karma must be definitely met and conquered, or humanity can enter upon the new sub-race. Its next step in evolution. Europe is the first focal point because it was in Europe that the great part of the karma was engendered. Through many bitter wars, which drenched its soil in blood. Away back in 1917, we wrote, the final battle does not refer to the end of this present world war of nations, but to the close of the true battle of Armageddon, of which the present world war is but the first phase. Just as changes must take place in the planet, so must they take place in humanity through bloody wars, strikes, and other conflicts, which will continue until all conflicts of man with man and man's resistance to the divine are swallowed up out of the waters of affliction. There shall arise a new and greater humanity with true brotherhood, love, peace, and harmony and cooperation as its watchword. Cosmic concept. Having heard remarks of discouragement from a devoted student which showed a lack of cosmic concept of present day conditions, we feel it is our duty to make clear the laws back of the present crisis. To understand these terrible conditions, keep in mind several distinct points, namely, one, that God established this world upon certain fundamental laws for the good of mankind individually and collectively. Two, one of the most important of these laws is the law of action and reaction, or whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Examined in the light of this law, nearly every colonial empire had at some time sown the seeds of selfishness, aggrandizement, and aggression, and the domination of weaker peoples. By force of arms, they have invaded and seized other countries and peoples. Therefore, do not be surprised to see those empires, in their turn, suffer invasion. But three, the great difference between their invasions and the present invasions in Europe is that their domination of the invaded countries was, on the whole, benevolent instead of ruthless pillage and regimented and enslavement of conquered peoples. Instead of inaugurating human slavery, they had abolished it. Instead of religious persecution, they did not interfere with the native religions, except to abolish human sacrifice, such as the burning of widows in India, headhunting among cannibals, and allow the natives to live their own lives while they were being assisted to higher standards of living. Therefore, while these great empires may suffer invasion and even lose some of their colonies, these countries that now, sowing the seeds of barbarism, cruelty, and slavery, must accept to reap similar results later on. Also, the United States must someday expect to reap the results of the enslavement of the Negro and its mistreatment of the Indian, unless it makes up to both by such constructive treatment as will overbalance the destructive. Karmic reapings. The next thing to keep in mind is four, that these national karmic reapings are not a willful punishment for our sins by a revengeful God. They are a natural and inevitable reaping of the causes each nation has set up. And until mankind learns that the fundamental laws of toleration, independence, freedom, to pursue their own evolution, brotherhood, and cooperation are the only basis for permanent peace and prosperity among nations, all will continue to suffer until these laws go into effect through some sort of world federation or super government, such as we outline in the Philosophy of War and our essay, The New World Order. I don't like this New World Order business, even though I agree with what they're saying, but I don't believe it needs to be under one world governed. We should govern ourselves. So, yeah, there's conflict in here for me. That some such world federation as possible was clearly seen by the poet Alfred Lord Tennyson in his prevision described in the famous poem Locksley Hall. Therein he tells us, when I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world and all the wonders that would be, saw the heavens filled with commerce, agrides, and magic snails, heard the heavens filled with shoutings, and there rained a ghastly dew from the nations, ere naives grapping in the central blue, till the war drum throbbed no longer, and the battle cries were furrowed in the parliament of man, the federation of the world. The next point to be remembered is 5, that this conflict is a manifestation of the battle between the spiritual forces which make for freedom, other, and civilization, the anti-spiritual forces which make for regimentation, slavery, and barbarism, between the forces of Christ and Antichrist, as we have explained in Spiritual War Bulletin at the outbreak of the war. Behind all the outer reason, this is the war for ultimate destruction of Christianity and the type of civilization which Christianity has built up. It is fundamentally a war between the forces of Antichrist and those of the Christ, between the forces of darkness and the forces of light. For only by the total destruction of all freedom of religious, thought and ideals and the complete domination of atheism, can dictator despotism be maintained? Importance of faith. The next idea to hold is 6, the great importance of keeping your faith in God, especially in the face of seeming disaster. As we said in our article of faith, the lesson for us today is that of true faith, the faith which is an attribute of the soul, which is necessary to correlate the human consciousness with the divine. We can have the absolute faith, which comes from the realization of our oneness, that divine. Can we lead the cosmic divine light flow through us and our conditions and allow it to solve our problem for us? The most tragic thing that can happen to your spiritual life is a loss of faith in God. Without faith, only wretchedness and despair remains. One student remarked that there could be no just God, nor even a benevolent, beneficent, overruling providence, or he would not allow innocent and peaceful nations to be wantonly and brutally invaded. But of course, he did not consider the karma of those nations as referred to above. God does not set aside his wise laws to answer our prayers for protection, even the prayers of a whole nation. Nor should you cry, there is no just God, because his children break his laws of peace and brotherhood and have reaped the results. Remember, 7, that it is the duty and responsibility of each of you who are so privileged as to have the great truths of God, fundamental law, explained to you, to take a positive stand and stabilize the words of cheer and hope the faith of the unenlightened masses, whose ignorance of God's laws leaves their minds a prey to chaos and fear. Instead, we must take courage and supremely confident, for the permanent peace is the destiny of mankind and cannot fail ultimately to materialize. Yet since man is God's vice regent on earth, he can do much to hasten the day of the ultimate permanent peace, just as in ages past, he has done so to retard its manifestation. Another comforting thought to hold is 8, that each soul chose to incarnate in the race and country as well as in the family in which he now finds himself. There he must be a positive factor by sharing and helping to redeem without complaining the karma of the nation which he helped to create in the past. Truth. And it's the truth. We've all chosen to be in a specific spot, in a specific family, with a specific mission. Sorry, guys, I'm having a hard back pain day. Heals. So-called death. Also remember 9, that the mere passing out of this earth life through so-called death in war is not the most tragic thing in life. Oh, only a return home. It is merely laying aside prematurely your earthly garment and ascending into the next higher phase of life, as we all must do sooner or later. The really tragic thing in life is that which retards your spiritual growth and piles up tragic karma for the future is not death, but the oh God, but to perpetuate injustice, cruelty, and human suffering. Therefore, mourn not for the mere loss of life, the sudden ending of this incarnation. Instead, send out your love and compassion to all who are suffering from the cruelties of war. Pray they may be taken the power courageously to endure, that their suffering may be quickly ended. Light ahead. And finally, remember 10, there is light ahead, for there is nothing so dark that it can't be lightened. There is nothing so poor that it is hopeless. There is nothing so bitter that it cannot be sweetened. Nothing so fearful that it cannot be faced through the power of the Christ within. Watch expectantly for the life of peace to break through. Do not allow your hearts to be dismayed or your minds to be dominated by newspaper and radio reports of war. Before going to bed at night, read something of spiritual and inspiring nature. Repeat our prayer for world peace, that your subconscious mind may have a constructive vision upon which to meditate during the night. Watch for the beginning of the changes. Be not dismayed or at any trial or disaster, but recognize your great opportunity to spread the light of truth. Keep away from the places of inharmony, confusion, and crowds, except crowds at religious gatherings, joyous musicals, cheerful plays, and happy sports. When you have to mingle with the unenlightened, go forth, change positivity with the radiance of the Christ within, and spread cheer and comfort to all you contact. Walk as those who are sustained by the power of the living God, for verily he walks with you. Sick of war. Know well, dear students, that there is a divine wisdom that is greater than man's. There is a divine power greater than the armies of mortals. There is a divine love that is deeper than the love of power. There is a world that is sickening of disunion, of broken treaties and solemn promises, of antagonisms of war, and there is in the hearts of all peoples the germ of good which must and will awaken, and which will say, we will have no more of this. The very stars in their courses are fighting against the debauchers of humanity and are gathering their forces for the inauguration of the new day. Man against man, instead of man for man, can result only in destruction. The forward march of evil is bringing nearer the final judgment, when his own shall be gathered together to establish his kingdom of righteousness on earth. Rest in confidence. Rest in peace and blessing while subversive forces threaten you and cry out your curses upon God and man. Pray for peace and plenty while famine stalks through the land. Pray for courage and stability while nations clash and continents disappear. For lo, the time is at hand when all that has been foretold shall shortly come to pass. Be ye therefore prepared. Let none of these things affright or move you. Recognize your oneness with the divine, for lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. Victory. Here's a little poem. Buggies. Victory. This is a poem. Victory, victory, children of earth. Something immortal in thee has been birth. The gods of the storm winds have taken their flight, and the angels of mercy are bringing thee light. Anguish and sorrow no more shall depress. The forces of heaven brought thee success. Blessings immortal descend like the dew. Look for thy blessing, it waiteth for you. Angels stand round thee and ever keep time. Chant ye the victory in melodious rhyme. Children of earth, fear nothing of harm. The new day is dawning. Look, look at its charm. Victory, victory, with happiness crowned. Peace and sweet health shall fold thee around. Victory, victory, to God give thy praise. Children of earth, thy soul's senses raise. Thine is the power to work as to weep. Out of thy life, then all sorrows sweep. When tears and sorrows seem pressing thee down, look up and sing victory. This is my crown. I'm going to leave that there. I talked a hell of a lot in the middle of all of that, and I do apologize, but it's so true. This book is effing amazing. Why are we here? But look at it. So, like, if you read 1984 in the context of here and now, read this book as if they're talking about now, because it definitely was written 40 something. I keep forgetting. 46, maybe. But I mean, if we just think about the era that they were, how the hell did they know any of this stuff? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. (1941). 1941. And like, these words are reverberating in the here and the now. I mean, we need to stop squabbling over the people in the truther community. Oh, but this one and that one and this one and that one and this spiritual concept and that spiritual concept. Like, I have to transcend it all when I'm in a chat because I can't. When you realize it's all one, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's all a part of our experience. We're all here to wake the F up and ascend. We're here, many of us who are already awake, is to hold the frequency of light, love, consciousness, the Christ within. We're supposed to put this out into the universe, and how we're going to do that if we're stuck at home? We can't spread frequency when we're stuck at home. We need to get out. We need to do work. And for many people who follow Nasera Jacera and like, oh, you're going to get all this money and da 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 da, the concepts of the other portion of that is, yeah, we all need to be out of war. We all need to work together. We all need to help everybody in our communities. But we can't do that if we're in our selfishness, thinking about ourselves. And what do you think that looks like? If you hear people talk about crypto and talk about the RV and talk about gold and silver, I can't go to the store right now. I can't go down the block to Meijer or in New York, Stop and Shop, or, down south in, I don't even know what you guys have down there. Walmart. Everybody has Walmart. Can't go in there and buy my groceries with gold. I can't hand them some gold coins and they're gonna be like, oh great, Allison, you're covered, thank you. Like, that doesn't work, and it will eventually slowly transition, but it ain't happening anytime soon. Things have been infiltrated, folks. I've been saying it, but I'm going to say it here. I did an episode about the time crystal. Did an episode talking about the scalar wave and how it's infiltrated via quantum entanglement. The UFO dude that was talking today, disclosing some stuff, was very much talking about interdimensional and physics. It's all waves of function, of math, physics. It's infiltrated, folks. You have the ability within your own mind to transcend it all and to still continue on the path that you're meant to continue on. You just have to keep living life in the present moment, not worrying about what the news says, not worried about what this article on Telegram says. You got to do you. You got to move above that. Read, listen to intellectual conversations that are they're either going to make you remember who you actually are on a soul level. If it has any slight vibration of fear, move away from it. Block that out, because that's what a lot of people in movements are under fear that, oh my gosh, I need to do prepping. Oh my goodness, have food. And I get it. It makes practical, logical, rational sense to do so. But there are people out there who can't and are surrounded by people who are, I was one of those people. I was in a place where everybody was asleep. There was more people awake not where I personally was living, but on the borough I was living in. Most people are aware. Aware doesn't mean they're awake. They're aware. They're not prepping. Think about if only 6 to 7, 8% of us are awake, fully functionally conscious, Christ knowing what we are on a soul level, knowing what's going to happen down the pike, taking these words and understanding cosmic law. We got to be the anchors of light, the pillars that anchor into the earth, up to the universe, that people are going to be gravitated towards. Your job is to help people understand. Your own words, your own perceptions. As long as it's cohesive, doesn't need to be in agreement with everything other people say, but it needs to have a spark of enlightenment. Someone needs to get the downloads, the epiphany, the light bulb moment will happen for more people if we continue to press forward out of fear. Most people won't wake up, and it's not because we don't want those people to wake up. That's their soul contract. We contracted to be where we are, with situations where we kind of have a predestined life in a sense. We get to determine and choose, but that either determines us to be on the mundane line of existence where you're just null and void, living life like everybody else, having kids, having a family, and doing what society dictates to you, or are you going to raise your timeline and evolve up? And not to say that you're not evolved if you have a family and you live that life, but you need to be consciously aware at any moment things can change and you can move up. And the dynamics of life change. And I can only say that for personal experience that my timeline has exponentially changed multiple times. Multiple people have read me and multiple people got some things right, but when I go back and I'm like, well, that didn't happen. I'm like, well, no, your timeline changed. Time and energy is fluid. So if you make one decision, that might change the course of your timeline, where the things that were on that timeline being seen by somebody is null and void, not there anymore because you moved up. That makes sense. Anywho, yeah, I have a lot on my mind. I had a long day. Hopefully I get a job. I need one. Need to pay the bills. And the weather is just stupid hot today, so that was draining. Anywho, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. This book is amazing, and I cannot wait to read more of their books. I think I put it back on the shelf. I have another book that I have like on hand that I want to read. The Age of Aquarius. Yeah, their books are amazing. I'm highly recommended to read this. All the links are in the description below. Sending each and every one of you protection, light, love, and shielding. Make sure on a daily basis that you're checking in with yourself, you're going within, and you're doing the spiritual work, because we all need to be strong right now. Stand in your convictions. Do you, boo? But realize we're all one. And if one of us gets better, it ripples. There's a ripple effect. So with that, I hope to see you guys on the next one. Hope everybody has a start to your wonderful weekend. Please be safe out of the storms. I know it's been very stormy in certain parts of the United States and across the world, be honest. Please be safe, be seen. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.